Welcome back to another video. This one is going to be on factoring expressions. So our learning intention today is to be able to factor algebraic expressions. You will know that you are successful when you can identify the greatest common factor of terms, including variable terms. You can use the distributive property to factor algebraic expressions, and you can write a term as a product involving a given factor. So we're going to start right away into some vocab review. So we need to know what greatest common factor is, or a GCF. So I have put that on here for some review. The greatest common factor is the greatest of the common factors shared by two or more numbers. So if I was looking at 8x plus 28, I would need to find the greatest common factor of 8 and 28. And we'll look at that in just. So let's move down. So since our goal here is to be able to factor expressions, I'm going to give you some information about using factoring. So when you're factoring an expression, it means that factoring out is doing the opposite of distributing into the parentheses. So our last section, we learned the distributed property, and we said that we are going to distribute in. And now this time we're going to factor it out. So we're going to take the answer that we would have got from distributing and we're going to reverse it. So therefore, instead of multiplying each term inside of the parentheses, we must divide each term by a common factor. And factoring creates an equivalent expression. So we learned about equivalent expressions in the last section. So remember, equivalent expressions means an expression with the same value. All right, so let's look over here on the right. So if we're factoring out, like I said, I have 8x plus 28. So what I need to do is I need to get it back to what it would have looked like if I was going to do the distributive property. So I'm working in reverse, okay? So I need to decide what is the greatest common factor of these two numbers, and that's going to go here. So here's step one. I'm going to figure out what is the greatest common factor. If you look down here, I gave you a little chart. So factors of 8 would be 1, 2, 4, and 8. Factors of 28 would be 1, 2, 4, 7, 14, and 28. So if you remember, it says the greatest common factor is the common factor shared by two or more numbers. So when I look at this chart, the only ones that I can take, which I circled for you, would be 2 and 4, because 1 isn't going to do anything for me, right? So 2 and 4 are the only ones that I can take, but I'm going to take the greatest common factor. So I'm going to take 4 because this is the greatest number that they both share that I know will go evenly into both of these numbers. Okay, so I chose to go by 4, but sometimes, like I said down here, you can also divide by 2, but most of the time we divide by the greatest common factor. So if it's something that is really challenging for you, you can divide by 2, but it's going to end up giving you more work. So definitely find the factors of each number. You can write it out just like I did, and then you're going to find the largest one that they both share. So in this example, it's 4. So then my first step is I am going to divide both of these by 4. So 8x divided by 4 is 2. So I'm going to have the 4 out here, and then I'm going to have the 2x on the inside because I took that out. So what is 8 divided by 4? 2x. What is 28 divided by 4? 7. So now I have my greatest common factor times what the answer was when I divided, and then my greatest common factor times what it was when I divided. So I could go back here and look, and I could go 4 times 2 is 8, which would be 8x, plus 4 times 7 is 28, which would be 28. So then it would bring me back to this answer. So this is still not done because I need to get it to look like this. So I'm going to say 4x. I don't need both of these 4's here. And I don't need both of these in parentheses. So I can say 4 times 2x plus 7 which is what I see here. Because now I'll know if I got it right by distributing. And if I get this answer, then I know that I have factored correctly. So 4 times 2x is 8x. That's correct. 4 times 7 is 28. That is correct. So I have factored correctly. Okay, so think of everything that you just did in the last section with distributing. You're just going to be reversing it. And if you look at your notes for distributing, you'll see I kept the same exact problem and I put them here so you can see it exactly in reverse. Okay, so we started here and then we went to here, then here. This one, we're going to start here and we're working our way backwards. Okay, so look at those to give you some guidance if you get confused. That's what your notes are here for, is to help you when you are working on these and you get stuck. So make sure you're utilizing your notes. So here's a couple things that you're going to do. You're going to factor out in different ways. So one of the ways to factor out would be the greatest common factor, which we just talked about. So let's work this one out together. So 15x plus 25. If I wanted to factor out the greatest common factor, I can look at these numbers and, well, I know because they both have fives at the end that they're going to be able to factor by 5. And if I went up higher than that, they wouldn't factor evenly. So I'm going to say this is 5. So I'm going to pull out the 5. And then how many times can 5 go into 15? Well, I know 5 can go into 15 3 times. So I'm going to make my parentheses. So 5 times 3 is 15. So I'm going to put the 3x here and then the plus sign. How many times does 5 go into 25? It goes in 5 times. And then I can close my parentheses. And I'm just going to check my work just to make sure. So I'm going to go 5 times 3 is 15x. 5 times 5 is 25. I know I have factored correctly. You're going to do the same thing for these 3 problems. So this one has 3 different terms. You need to make sure that whatever you pull out, whatever expression you factor out of here, that you are picking something that goes evenly into 12, 9, and 30. Okay, let's look at the next section. So this one, you might be asked to factor out the rational number. Okay, so what does that mean? Factor out the coefficient of the variable term. So remember, coefficient is the number that is attached to the variable. So in this one, 1/7 z plus 1/7. So the 1/7 is the coefficient. So that is what I have to factor out. So I'm going to pull out 1/7. And now I need to rewrite this. Okay, so I know it's going to be plus 1/7. What's it going to have to times by? I'm just going to put z, because 1/7 times 1 is 1/7, because anything times 1 is itself, right? Plus 1/7. So again, anything times 1 is itself. So I'm going to say 1/7 times plus 1. So 1/7 z plus 1. So if I was going to distribute this back out, 1/7 times z would be 1/7 z. 1/7 times 1 would be 1/7. So I know I have factored correctly. You're going to take out the coefficient. These are the coefficients. I'm going to circle them for you so that you don't get confused. The coefficients are the numbers that are connected to the variable. So here's your coefficient. You're going to factor this out. So your coefficient goes here, and you're going to decide what has to go inside the parentheses. Okay, so coefficient will go here. Now I factored that out. Now what would times by this to get this? So that's the number I need to put in here. So go ahead and try that. Factor out the rational numbers. And the other thing that you're going to have to do is factor out a negative number. So you're going to factor out the indicated number, which you see here. So if you get a problem like this, it's going to look very similar to this. It's going to tell you exactly what you need to factor out, and then you'll just work through it. So this one says factor -4 out of -8c plus 16. Okay, So, well, I know that this is going to be my number on the outside, and now I need to decide what's going to happen on the inside. So if it is -8 and I have a -4 out here, what times 4 makes 8? I know that's 2. So it's going to be 2c because if I go 4 times 2, it's 8, and that's what I have here. But I need to make sure that I don't get my signs mixed up. So out here I have a negative. I need to decide, do I put a negative in here or do I leave it positive? Here it is a negative. So I need to remember my rule, same signs positive, different signs negative. So that means my number on the inside is going to have to stay a positive. So this would be -4 times +2, which would be -8c. And then I need to decide what times 4 is 16. So 4 times 4 is 16. So I'm going to put the 4 in here. And again, I need to check. So is this going to be -4 times 4, or is it to get +16, or is it going to be -4 times -4 to get +16? And if I remember my rules, same signs positive, different signs negative, I know that this has to be a negative, which would then be rewritten as -4 times 2c minus 4. I almost rewrote it the same way again. So you're going to try both of these on your own, and then we will talk about it during our recap. Have a great day.